Oh
you.
my goodness. Oh my goodness.
I think I'm here.
Oh, perfect.
Good morning, John.
I'm going to break my neck before the day's over between these chairs.
You want to trade seats?
I don't
You want to
know
trade
the
seats?
line.
No, no, no. I'm kidding.
Okay.
But these,
But I am going to listen.
Forget it.
That's why I'm here. That's the mode I'm in. Yeah, that's where I'm going. Just so you'll know, I don't intend to open my mouth.
That's my plan also. You didn't bring an extra pen, did you?
No,
Sounds like Tony.
wrong one.
Hey, John, you don't have an extra pen, do you?
no, but Andrew's got a
Oh.
whole bunch over.
That's right.
No, I know.
Lovely inside and out.
So, this is quite interesting, actually. Thank you for
We run out of seats. No, we haven't.
I understand Ann Cameron has fingers on the pie here.
Of course, anything she can
Nobody
do
wants
is
to
divisive.
sort of like church.
Right.
She's making money on the tennis
I
court.
like the front row in class, mainly because then the teacher thought I was engaged. You know, even if in my head I'm counting sheep.
Yeah, Ellsbury. Yeah.
It's always been my advice to Brock. I'm like, hey, you know, it's a good look.
Here at the other end.
Morning.
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 Sadly, yes.
I didn't know
Oh, I
whether
love
to
your
sit up
shirt.
there like this with microphone.
I assumed it was going to be the same as, you know.
Glad you're here.
What's up? Good morning. How are you, man? Nice to see you.
Like I said, my ego is very small. I just want to enjoy my life.
Shoot. Hey. Good morning. Nice to see you.
That's all right. No worries.
Hey, Ron, how are you?
Man. So I have a birthday party to take Marshall to this afternoon in Milton, and he was supposed to get a ride. He and Freddie were both going to go her trip, right? And it's great. I love Fred and Lindy for a lot of reasons, but the division of labor when it comes to those two boys, it's really nice to have your best friend live around the corner, right? It's the greatest thing. And they sit next to each other. Their birthdays are 8 days apart, right? So we do joint birthdays, right? They play on the same teams together. They sit next to each other. It's just easy.
So, Tim, I wish I were going to be around to see those two boys playing these parties.
Oh, someday. Someday.
Yeah,
You're right. And Marshall is, I don't know how well you know my
Change all the
father-in-law.
thing. Yeah.
Marshall is like, it's just, there's a lot going on up here, but he doesn't say anything. He's really, he's an interesting kid. Good morning. How are you?
Movie theater, I think about what a great
How
place
you
it is.
doing?
It's really a terrific place. Very comfortable. It's incredibly comfortable.
Good morning.
Good morning. Is this working? Good. Well, this feels like the good old beach club days. But this was really an official Town of Henlopen Acres public hearing, believe it or not. And we thank you so much for coming today. Steve, you want a seat, or you're gonna hang out? Okay, very good. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you to the Beach Club friends for hosting us today. As I said, this is an official public hearing of the town to hear comments from all of you, all of our residents, on an important proposal that we sent out to all the property owners of record. It's a proposal to try to protect the tree canopy, specifically on private property, so it affects all of our residents. And the commissioners felt it was very important to hear from you on what you would like us to do in this area. We've been wrestling with this issue for 2 years, and there have been varying opinions expressed by the commissioners on it, and we felt that we needed to really hear from you to determine the right course going forward. So let me introduce our commissioners. You know them, I'm sure, but some of you who are new to the town may not. At the far end, we have Tiffany Derrickson, who joined us most recently, Jeffrey Jacobs, John Staffier. Jeff is our treasurer. John Staffier, who's been on the commission a long time, Patty Richards, Tim Heidel, and Dick Thompson. Also, you're going to be hearing from Anna Fagan. Anna's our town manager that joined us in October, and we are so thrilled that you are with us. She's done an amazing job, and I'm sure you'll enjoy getting to know her. Thank you, Anna. Anna and Andrea is our town clerk. They both were a great team and put this whole thing together, so thank you. Before Anna comes up and tells you about the proposal and what it does, I thought I'd just give a few introductory remarks to kind of set the stage and give you some perspective on how we came to be where we are. As I said, this is a 2-year process, so I wanted to give a little insight into how we came to develop this proposal and tell you a little bit as well about our canopy, our special, beautiful canopy that really defines the beauty of our town. There was really, the impetus for the proposal was really twofold. First is our tree committee. This is one of the 10 committees of the town that plays a very important role for us. They're specifically focused on the town trees. They oversee a plan and develop a plan to plant new trees in the right-of-way that's in front of all of your lots every year, to maintain those trees, to protect them. And in the 10 years that the tree committee has been in existence, if you count what we're going to do this year, we'll have planted nearly 200 trees in the right-of-way. So yes, we've probably knocked on your door and said, hey, we're going to do this out front. Please help us out. And we appreciate your support in doing so. And we've also, over those 10 years, spent about $250,000. So we allocate roughly $25,000 to $30,000 a year on this budget. Some of the important steps that the tree committee took when it was first established is we hired an arborist for the town, Jay Ashby of Cypress Trees, who will be happy to come out to your home and give you some free advice on your trees. We developed a management plan for how do we sustain the canopy over the long term. We developed a native tree list with his help, and the tree committee took an inventory of all the town trees themselves, which was a Herculean effort. We also earned the Tree City designation, and I want to introduce some of the members of the early tree committee that really were pioneers in this effort and just thank them for their efforts. John Shore was the first chairman of the tree committee, helped establishment. Stand up, John. Henry DeWitt, he did the yeoman's work on the tree inventory, walking up and down the street and cataloging 811 town trees. Natalie McGregor, I'm not sure she's here today, but she played a key role. Freddie Nolan, where are you, Freddie? Freddie, come on, stand up. And Linda Moses, who's not here today, but really has been very active from the very beginning. The tree committee went into a second phase with some new members, and they continued the efforts on the town trees, but they had a new perspective, which was it's probably not enough just to look at the town trees. We really need to focus also on the trees on private property, because that's where most of the trees are. And they were concerned about the loss of trees, and so they stepped forward and recommended some things to the commissioners. This was 2 years ago, that their purview, you might say, be expanded to include all trees in the town, that we consider some new measures such as getting a permit to take out a tree, maybe an expanded use of a minimum density standard on everybody's property. And so they were trying to really recommend to us a much broader view of what steps we could take. And let me introduce the people that are now serving on the tree committee that kind of was, they were advocating this to us. I want to acknowledge Jeff Jacobs, who's been on the committee since 2019 and chair since 2022. Linda Moses again. Lee Raisley joined in 2018. I think Lee's here. Lou Montgomery, 2021. Andy Pedigo. Andy, are you here? Okay. And also Tim Heidel, who joined the committee in 2024. So this was really the genesis of kind of the conversation with the commissioners about we need to broaden our regulations. The second factor that really played a pivotal role in this is the tree petition, which was initiated by Wendy Jacobs. And Wendy, I know you're here somewhere. Everybody knows Wendy. And Wendy took the initiative to engage with a number of our residents and collected signatures from about 100 of you, representing about a third of all the homes in the acres, and basically reaffirmed what the tree committee was saying, which is we need to do more, and left it up to us to figure that out. So we did a lot of research. We looked at a lot of ordinances across the country. We engaged with our attorney, and we said, look, we're going to come up with a proposal, and we may not all agree on it, but we're going to come up with one that we think responds to these urgings, and we're going to send it out to all of you, and you're going to give us the wisdom of where we go in terms of going forward. And John Staffier, I want to acknowledge John Staffier of our commissioners. He's the one that came up with the particular focus of the proposal, which is we should key in on the canopy trees, which are the shade trees in the town, the oaks, the maples, the large trees, and we also should focus in on the setback areas, the perimeter of the lot. And basically, as you'll hear from Anna, what we're trying to do is protect the canopy trees that exist all around the perimeter. So that's really the background of how we got here. And in terms of our canopy, I'm sure you know that we have one of the most outstanding canopies in the entire state of Delaware. In fact, the state has recognized us as having been in the top 5 ever since they've been measuring it in terms of the density of our canopy. However, we've got 2 challenges. One is the age of our canopy. It's old. If you look at these photos that we put up here for you to take a look at, these are photos from when the community was founded in 1930. And you can see in the middle photo, Lee, there is your house, or the land on which your house now sits, but it was an empty field. There were no trees there. Well, there are some in the background. So there were some trees scattered, but Colonel Corcoran really planted a lot of trees in 1930. So when you think about it, how old are they today? Well, they're nearing 100 years old. And the trees that were already here are even older. And so Jay Ashby, our arborist, right off the bat said, you know, over half of the trees in the acres, this is when we started 10 years ago, are mature or over mature, which means there is a life expectancy built in that we know about, and we're going to be continually losing trees and needing to replenish it. So that's just something to think about. In addition, the second big thing that's challenging our canopy, as you all know, is construction. We have had 26 new houses built in the last 12 years. And we know that when a house sells, if it's a smaller house and it's a dated house, it will likely be torn down. And when it's torn down, the person that's purchasing it is likely to build a 6,000 square foot house with a swimming pool. And so this is displacing a lot of the old trees. And that's really the angst, I think, that has been felt by the tree committee, by many of the residents. And you'll see that we tried to address that as well in the proposal. So just with that as a background, as an introduction to tell you, to share kind of what we've been thinking about for the last 2 years. As I said, our residents, as they give us comments, they're indicating different views on this proposal. We have different views amongst us. You may have seen a letter that was written by 2 of our commissioners. We hope that many of you will come up to that microphone and share your wisdom with us and give us your best advice. Our goal is to take that and try to come up with a final product that all of us can agree on and that our residents can support so that we can go forward together on this important initiative. So thank you for your time, and I'd like to introduce Anna Fagan now to go through the details of the proposal.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, wonderful. Thank you for spending your Memorial Day Friday here with us. Your participation in this process is incredibly important. We appreciate all of your time and attention. We appreciate those that have submitted comments so far. What I'm going to do is just provide an overview of the proposed amendments to Chapter 114, trees of the town code. As Joni said, these were discussed at the April 11th meeting of the Board of Commissioners. There was a subsequent mailing that went out to all residents that details this proposal. We do have copies of that mailing available over here with Andrea, as well as copies of the comment form. If you haven't yet filled that out, please help yourself. To the folks that are listening in online, we do have copies of my presentation slides available in the same location that you found the link to the live broadcast if you'd like to follow along. So the first thing I want to clarify is that the protections that are proposed in these amendments focus on canopy trees, which are those trees that reach a mature height of over 40 feet and have a foliage that creates substantial shade. So we're talking about deciduous trees like oaks, maples, and hickories, but also certain tall evergreens like loblolly pines. Conversely, the proposed amendments do not cover non-canopy trees. So those would be your small specimen trees like dogwoods, crepe myrtles, cherries, as well as slightly larger understory trees like cedars, spruces, cryptomeria. I also want to just highlight that the town does have an approved tree list. This was originally developed by the Tree Committee in 2019 with assistance from Jay Ashby, our town arborist. As written, the amendments rely on the town-approved tree list to help distinguish between those trees which are considered protected and those which are not. The Tree Committee is currently in the process of updating the tree list. We do have a first draft of that available over here on the table as well. If you're interested in reviewing that, please just keep in mind that the update is still in progress, and so that is subject to change. Another very important thing to understand is that these amendments establish areas in the setbacks on private property in which canopy trees are considered protected. And these areas are shaded in green on the diagram up on the screen. So on every lot in Henlopen Acres, there's a buildable area in which a dwelling may be erected. You'll have your pool and your patio. And then around the perimeter are what we call setbacks. And these are areas that cannot be built upon except for landscaping, sidewalks, driveways. And these setbacks measure 20 feet in the sides, 20 feet in the rear, and then they vary from property to property in the front based on the adjacent properties. As proposed, the tree protection areas would include the entirety of the side setbacks and the rear setback, and then the first 10 feet of the front setback closest to the town right away. We have incorporated a 5-foot allowance around the buildable area for purposes of construction and renovation. This basically just means that trees within those 5 feet of the buildable area can be removed to provide clearance for digging out the foundation, for maneuvering large construction equipment, and other construction activities.
Can I ask a question on that? So that mean that the setback is really essentially 15 feet?
Yes, in the case of construction or a major renovation. Mm-hmm. So getting into some of the specifics, we'll talk first about tree removal on private property. So currently, there are no provisions in the town code that require property owners to obtain a permit to remove a tree on their own property. What we're proposing is that property owners must apply for a permit to remove a canopy tree from the setbacks on their lot in any circumstance, whether it's for the purposes of construction or it's a singular removal. In the case of construction, the approval process would be built into the building permit process. We'll talk about that in a future slide. And for a singular tree, it would be just a singular application that you would complete and submit to the town. That application must demonstrate a good reason for that tree to be removed. And those bases for removal are listed here. So the tree is an invasive species or is otherwise undesirable and not on the town-approved tree list. The tree is dead or diseased. It's a present risk to persons or property. It's been substantially damaged, and so it's likely not to survive. it's in the way of a permitted driveway or utilities, it unreasonably interferes with permitted structures, or, as we discussed in the previous slide, it's within 5 feet of the buildable area in the case of construction or renovation. Important to note here that for 3 of these bases, a certified arborist must provide a report that supports that the tree is dead or diseased, that it's a risk, or that its survivability is jeopardized. So once a permit application is submitted, it then is under review by the town manager, myself, who can consult with the town arborist as deemed necessary. If the request is approved, you may be required to replace that tree on your property if you do not meet the required minimum tree density. And I'm going to touch on that in a future slide. If your request is denied, you may then appeal to the Board of Commissioners. And we've added a provision here that allows the town manager to waive requirements of Chapter 114 for good cause, including emergencies. So, for example, if a straight line wind comes through over the weekend and there's hazard trees that need to be removed immediately, then the need for a permit would be waived. So, minimum tree density. There is currently a code requirement that in order to construct a new home or to conduct a renovation of greater than 400 square feet, owners must submit a tree plan that satisfies a minimum tree density on your lot. The current density is 1 tree per 2,000 square feet of open space on a lot. So based on an average lot size of 20,000 square feet, the minimum number of trees you must have is 6. At least 50% of those are to be deciduous shade trees, 25% evergreen, and up to 25% may be specimen trees, those smaller trees. The proposed amendments increase the minimum density to 1 tree per 2,000 square feet of lot size. So on that same 20,000 square foot lot, the minimum number of trees required would be 10. At least 60% must be deciduous shade trees, canopy trees, 40% evergreen, and then specimen trees no longer count towards the minimum tree density. And just important to note here that trees in the town right-of-way do not count towards minimum density. As I said previously, we already require a tree plan as part of the building permit process, but the code does not currently specify what the contents of that plan should be. So the proposed amendments codify what information your tree plan must include. That's outlined here. So we want to know the number of existing trees. We want to know where they're located, how big they are, what their species is, and how healthy are they. We then want to know which trees you're planning to remove and what trees you intend to plant when construction is complete. The amendments also give the town the authority to inspect trees that are part of your tree plan. So there'll be an inspection before the certificate of occupancy is issued, and then 6 months after to ensure that the trees survive and that the density is being met. Trees must be replaced if they're found to be dead or diseased after they're planted. Another important component of the amendments is maintenance of trees. So currently there are no provisions that require property owners to maintain the trees on their lot. We're proposing that regular maintenance such as trimming, treatment of diseases, and cutting climbing vines be required to ensure a healthy canopy in the town. And then talking about violations and penalties, the code as it currently is written covers only town trees, and so currently those who illegally remove or damage a town tree must pay a civil assessment of $750 plus the value of that tree. Under the proposed amendments, those who violate any provision of Chapter 114 must pay that civil assessment of $750. And then if the violation involves damage or removal of a protected canopy tree, then there would be an additional fine of $2,500 per tree. And then lastly, if the individual holds a business license or a rental license, they are at risk of losing that license for up to 2 years if they violate Chapter 114. And that does it for my formal presentation. At this time, we're going to open it up for questions.
Just one question back on that with the $2,500 per tree. Above it, right, is the value of a tree. So if it's a 75-year-old tree that is 75 feet tall, that's clearly over $2,500 in value. So I'm just curious if the proposed violation would say $750 plus an additional fine the value of the tree.
We've had some back and forth on what an appropriate amount for a violation and that involved the removal of a tree would be. We've gotten feedback that 2,500 is too low, 2,500 is too high. So we certainly would love to hear from you all today and what you think would be appropriate to deter folks from committing a violation.
Anna, what's the price of planting a tree? What is the town now spending to plant a deciduous tree?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head,
It's really not that much. I think it's about $500 a tree, something like that.
okay.
But that's, you're basically getting a bulge tree, right? So it's probably maybe like 16 feet tall, some of them, that type of. So it's easily managed. Like a tree to plant a 25 or a 30-foot tree, you need enough piece of equipment that comes in with the deep auger that goes down to plant like such a substantial tree. And those can be anywhere between 2,500 to 5,000.
Right, that's true. We have planting guidelines for the new trees that we plant in the right-of-way that our arborist helps us to define. Typically, our trees are not that size, so he recommends optimal sizes for new trees for a municipality, and they're more typically 8 feet, 10 feet, something like that.
Right, which I think
So
that
it's
makes
pretty
sense.
reasonable in cost for us.
Sure. I'm just curious about, like, if it's a violation, to make it a deterrent. That's my question, is because I agree with moving forward and planting the new trees, that's a reasonable amount. I'm just curious what everyone else thinks, that a deterrent for a 75-year-old tree coming down, $2,500 just seems a little minimal to me. I think a lot of people
Okay,
would be
can I just suggest that we continue with the formal comments and let everybody speak, and if you'd like to come up and make additional comments. In order to simulcast this effectively, the reason we have all these tech people here is to come up to the microphone if you want to make extended remarks. If you come up to the microphone, just identify your name and address so everybody at home also can see you and hear you well. And may I just make that suggestion?
Sure. Thank you for your questions. So we'll move into the public comment portion. We have some pre-registered commenters on a list that will go first. Anybody that has signed in this morning will follow. And then anybody else who wishes to get up and speak, please do so. We have a microphone here in the center aisle that we ask that you use so that folks listening in online can hear you and so that we have the recording after the fact. I have the unfortunate job of keeping time off to the side.
But you'll be very nice about it.
I will. I'll be very respectful. We just ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and I'll just pipe in if you surpass those 3 minutes and ask that you wrap up your comments. Please remember that you can also submit your comments in writing, so if you don't get to say everything that you want to say today, or you would like to comment after the hearing, please do so. You can submit comments to us via snail mail at Town Hall. You can drop them off, or we are accepting them via email. The comment period is going to remain open until the end of the day next Friday, so Friday, May 30th at 4:30 p.m. And all comments bear equal weight, regardless of how we receive them. So whether you fill out a survey, whether you speak here today, or whether you provide something in writing, they will receive equal consideration. So with that, I will steal this microphone and call up our first speaker, which I believe is Mr. Unger, Anthony Unger. Oh, and before you start into your comments, if you could please state your name and your property address, please.
Thank you. Anthony Unger.
we are, my wife is here as well, we are new residents to Henlopen Acres, and thank you very much for inviting us to talk at this meeting. Now, I wanted to give you the perspective of a new person to Henlopen Acres, particularly somebody who's purchased a lot and is planning on building a property. Our lot is rather small. It's one of the smallest lots in Henlopen Acres. It's on Fields End Road, 66 Fields End Road. And again, I wanted to say, I love trees, and trees are great, and we appreciate the canopy, but you have to understand how it affects some other people other than people who have a larger lot. Think about this, okay? We have 115 feet at the beginning of our width of our lot. 20 feet on either side with the house that we've designed, basically we're up to the setbacks. We're up to the setbacks. Take 5 feet away from that, a tree that now stands 6 feet from my building, the building that I'd like to build, could be a hazard to us, a hazard to us. If you've ever had a tree fall on your house, which I have, it creates a tremendous amount of anxiety and problems. So I think you should recognize that in Henlopen Acres, there are people that live on an acre or 2 acres, and they love their trees, and it may appear as though that this is a great policy. But I think we need to modify this policy, taking into account that there are people that have smaller lots that need to build a house, and you might say it's going to be a huge house, but we're limited to 6,000 square feet, and our house that we want to build is rather small. It's 4,500 square feet. But that's all we could fit on this lot. And we could have a tree, a massive pine tree that is literally 6 feet from the edge of my building that could, as Anna's pointed out, be 100 years old. 100 years old. And could fall on my house and cause damage to the house or damage to person or property. You've got to consider that. The other thing I think we need as a community to consider is that this policy as written, I think will probably generate some liability and legal issues. And I think you've got to consider that when you're adopting policy. As is, the policy consists of, as Anna pointed out, a tree plan. And we have a tree plan that we're constructing right now. And I'm not saying we should let people just clear lots and so forth like that, but I think that the tree plan as it is right now seems to handle an interaction between the community and the administration. You have to present stuff to the board to get a permit, to get approval to remove trees. And that's a reasonable way to approach this. And I'm not saying that's the only way we should do that, but I think that a canopy zone, to me, particularly for the small lot owners, is going to be a particular problem. We live in Rehoboth right now, and we're moving to Henlopen Acres. And people in Rehoboth spend a lot of money, $600,000 per year, defending legal liability and litigation in that town because of trees and other zoning issues. You've got to take that into account. It's my understanding also that the town will need to hire a full-time individual, employ an arborist to defend or to conduct oversight of this regulation. I think that needs to be considered as well.
Mr. Unger, you are at 3 minutes. If you could wrap up, please.
Oh, last thing I'd like to say is going forward, I just think that we need to look at this from a different perspective of new people that need to construct buildings, and I think that that's an important factor in going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next on our speakers list is Suzanne McDermott.
Hi, thank you for the time today. Everyone's put in a lot of effort. I know it's taken 2 years to come up with a lot of the proposed ideas, and just want to thank you for all the people that have taken the time to look at the trees, assess the trees, 7 Pine Reach, I am the person previously that was discussing the cost or the fines that were being addressed. I think one of the things that's important, and the people that have lived here or generational families have spent a lot of time here. Everyone can see that the people that come through our neighborhoods on a daily basis, our streets, come in because of our canopy, because of the shade, because of the beauty of our neighborhood. And I think sustaining that in long term is going to be essential for our community. I think things with some of the setbacks for the health of the trees and things like that, I do agree that if it's a risk, that's important to consider. I think looking at the health of the tree when we're doing the construction or new constructions, taking down and allowing for the square footage per lot is important, but those setbacks to maintain and make sure the tree is viable and lives for that too. So I'm not sure the 5-foot setback is going to be enough for that. Maybe consider extending that a little bit more. One of the things that I would like to bring up is with the permit, if a permit is applied for, if there's an option for the homeowner or the family, if they're taking down a tree and asking for it to be removed, to maybe replace that with another variety that's available on the approved tree list. Some people are not fond of hollies, things like that, that shed a lot and are constant maintenance for some of the homeowners. But if provided within that permit, if we're allowed to replace that with another tree, I would like that to be considered as well. I think that's important for some of the people moving forward that have existing trees within those guidelines. So that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Up next, we have John Schur.
Thank you, John Schur. As Joni said, I had the pleasure of being the very first chairman of the tree committee. I think David Lyons might have been involved, and maybe I was told I had no choice. But I think I actually do qualify, though, as a tree lover. And if you look at this proposed ordinance, the one thing I noticed right away was that when Henry and Freddie and I were out there trying to figure out how big trees were, we would hold hands around these trees. And it turns out that the right way to do it is actually in this legislation. But I've thought a ton about trees. I love trees, and I'm going to limit my comments to one story, which is we had a huge oak tree in our backyard, which was in this zone, this new zone. And for years, we noticed that every few years, a couple little leaves wouldn't appear, or it seemed like it was getting to the point where it was unhealthy. And I would bring in Tim Cisco. I'd bring in Bob. Where is Bob? Right here. Bring in Bob. Sonny, Tom. Everybody would look at this tree and try and decide, is this thing healthy or not? Jay Ashby came out and looked at it. And a couple years sent Tim up and would trim it and try and figure it out. And my neighbor, Tom Ingram, would say to me, John, that tree really worries me. It really upsets me. And I'd say, well, don't worry, Tom. I've had all the experts in look at it. And he'd say, okay. And then, one year we had paid Jay really a lot of money to trim the thing way back. And then I get, after a big storm, I get a video from Tom Ingram, and it's showing the tree kind of shaking in one of these storms. And he said to me, John, I just, this would fall on my house. I'm just really upset with it. And, it was a personal decision to take the tree down. And Jay Ashby actually came and took the tree down. But I guess my point is, there's parts of this that are great, but, incremental legislation of personal decisions or personal property rights, I don't think is appropriate. And for that reason, I'd really like to see this modified down. We have a lot of restrictions, as everybody's pointed out, on our lots already, and 55% of the lots are below the 20,000 square foot mark. And they're not perfect little boxes, as was pointed out a little while ago. Lots of lots have different shapes, and trying to control or have a big tree in one of these setbacks could be difficult. So with that, thank you all very much. Thanks for all your work.
Thank you. Up next, we have Scott Pinover.
Good morning. I'm Scott Pinover from 45 Pine Reach, and speaking on support of the proposed tree code changes. First, I'd like to thank the mayor and the committee for the great revisions they put together for our tree code. I think they're well thought out. The proposed changes to the tree code need to be implemented immediately. Henlopen Acre used to be a bucolic oasis within the town of Rehoboth. Residents took great pride in our trees, as highlighted and promoted by the tree signs at the gate from the arbor, noting it as the arbor capital of the country. Yet over the years, the bucolic escape has been diluted by clear cutting repeatedly by newcomers more interested in saving money and construction time on their homes while enjoying trees that exist in the existing lots. My wife's family has been coming here for over 80 years, and I for over 40 years. And over those years, sadly, we've seen a real change in the neighborhood. We've been shocked, disappointed, alarmed every time we come down by the destruction of the neighborhood's tree canopy. It's changing the character of the neighborhood and sadly transforming it to look more and more like a suburban neighborhood versus the country seaside escape that Colonel Corcoran had created 100 years ago. Some have argued that the new code is going to be difficult to enforce, but I would argue that people should support it and we can tweak it down the line as needed. This code is very similar, and it's actually a watered-down version of what the town of Rehoboth has implemented. And as we see outside our gates, there's many, many new homes regularly going up on very small lots, and trees are being successfully saved and beautiful homes are going up. I think one of the red herrings in this is the safety thing. People talk that their families are in danger by these trees. You're more likely statistically to be hit by a bolt of lightning than a tree. So regardless, the town has offered to implement a program where they'll check your trees for health and safety, and we can ensure that we've got a good, healthy tree inventory. Lastly, I'm really supportive of the setbacks. We live at 45 Pine Reach, one lot in from the corner of Dodd Lane. As people saw, the lot next to us was clear cut, a 2/3 of an acre lot, clear cut. The guy cut down every tree that he was allowed to, and he's still trying to cut down more trees by disputing lot lines. He cut down trees well over our lot line, and people are welcome to come over, and I'll show where that is. Not inches, feet, 8 feet within over our line. After consulting a lawyer, it was determined that we would likely spend more time and money on legal fees than we generate as compensation. So we gave that up. At this point, there's no way for us to get back our irreplaceable canopy trees that were removed from our property without our consent. Had the setback buffer been in place, we wouldn't have had to go through all this. This has created a tremendous amount of bickering within our family, a tremendous amount of stress, financial loss. We spent thousands on lawyers, and our family friction and headache can't be, compensated for. In summation, 45 Pine Reach fully supports all components of the proposed updates to the tree code. We hope these code changes will slow the decimation of trees in our town and get residents to recognize the importance and value of our tree canopy, allowing our grandchildren to experience some semblance of the bucolic escape that we've enjoyed for decades here in Henlopen Acres, and what Colonel Corcoran called the place for country seaside living versus just another suburban neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Lee Raisley.
I'm Lee Raisley, but I'm speaking for my wife and three of my kids, so I'm going to be here for 15 minutes. Don't start the clock yet. No, I'll be brief. I do want to thank the commissioners and the mayor for addressing this. This has been kicked around a long time. I'm on the tree committee, so I'm aware of the discussions that we've had, and I think it's terrific that it's an open discussion and a public hearing. And I fully support the goal of tree preservation, fully support it, 100%. However, I think from my perspective, I'd rather see an incentive-based approach versus a punitive approach. A couple of things come to mind. One, it's really hard to legislate common sense and community values, along with good taste. And the next thing that I'm reminded of is the old saying, "Hi, I'm here from the government. I'm here to help about those trees." But I know that's not the situation here. With the existing ordinance, there are issues that I see. The 5-foot setback really, if Mr. Unger's case, isn't enough room to be able to excavate a foundation without damaging the tree roots. So that's something to think about. Additionally, the large equipment that's required to go in and do this typically requires at least 8 feet to 12 feet to be able to maneuver around. So that's a concern. Secondly, the existing tree ordinance says that the minimum protection fencing should be 10 feet from the tree, not 5 feet. So a homeowner would be faced with, I can't do the minimum tree fencing required, but, and that's the minimum. If it's a larger tree, it's really half the distance to the drip line. So we do have some conflicts there. The way I read it initially was the tree would trump a sidewalk or a driveway, which were permitted uses. Anna's presentation seems to portray it differently. I agree with those that have said that not all lots are the same. I think this ordinance particularly hits small lots, odd-shaped lots, the hardest, because the setbacks are a larger portion in these lots than they are for the larger lots, just because of the sheer math of it. And there's some vagueness to some of the terms. Things like healthy appearance, substantially disfigured, unreasonably interferes. I think those are tough, right? And what we don't want is two homeowners going in and asking for a permit and then different outcomes, which I think will lead to hard feelings. So there's a lot of subjectiveness in the existing ordinance that I worry about. Now, from an incentive-based approach, it really would be to offer incentives for those that protect and maintain their tree cover. Things like fast-track permitting for new builds, fee reductions or waivers, and that could actually be done revenue neutral if we raise the permitting fee and then offered a discount for those plans that maintained the treescape. We have to figure out what that means, but that's just, to me, that makes some sense. Not all trees are equal. I mean, the reality is, if a tree's 80 years old, take a look at Field's End, somebody either got planted by God or somebody else planted it there. So they're not always situated in the right place. And I do know that some homeowners would prefer to redo their landscape. So in 80 years, it looks better. And that's why a common sense approach, holistically looking at the plans, to me is the right place to start. And the other is...
Mr. Raisley, you're past 3 minutes, sorry.
Remember my wife. I guess the last thing that I'll close with, I really do support, this is Janet talking, I really do support maintaining it. What I'm suggesting is there may be some ways, instead of going from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, there may be some things we can do in the interim to try to manage this and open a dialogue with people coming in and building that aren't as punitive and that lead to the outcome that we'd all like to see. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Henry DeWitt.
Henry DeWitt, 55 Fields End, built our house 20 years ago. I will say it's an example of what you can do in terms of saving trees, and I'll get to that shortly. I am fully supportive. Basically, my point is much of the value of Henlopen Acres is from our tree canopy, and it benefits every homeowner. You're benefited in your property by what your neighbors have. So it's in everybody's best interest to maintain it. Builders do not like trees. Builders on their choice would clear cut every lot they could. And they convince the property owner that this is of value to them when it isn't necessarily. My comment, I like the way the ordinances work. An open-ended ordinance, as has been suggested, where you give a lot of options to the builders and the homeowners, won't work because they will always find a reason why they can't keep that tree. It needs to be the town has permission to make concessions, not the homeowners specifying this won't work. A tree 5 feet from a house is no more dangerous than a tree 30 feet from a house. Trees protect each other. If you cut down one tree, the trees around it are at increased risk. We had one tree, or a branch actually, land on our house. The tree was in our neighbor's yard. It wasn't 5 feet away. It was quite a ways away. One of the things I would say in terms of the 5 feet, the town should have the option of recognizing that some trees will survive, some will not. We have a pine tree, a loblolly pine, and a magnolia that are about 5 feet from our house. They're doing fine with little care. Our builder tried to kill one of them, but I saved it. We had a red oak that was 5 feet from our house that we saved, and a year and a half later had to take down because it wouldn't survive. Oaks will not survive 5 feet next to construction. Loblolly pines, magnolias will. The one change I would make in the issue is in the front setback. I would say half of the front setback should be preserved, not just the 10 feet. Otherwise, I'm quite happy with what they're. We all know that we want zoning. You don't want a 10-story apartment complex next door, so we want zoning. The issue is where you draw the line. I think this ordinance is pretty well thought out. It may need some tweaks. I'm okay with that, but it's not, I mean, I was a commissioner in Rehoboth when that ordinance was passed. That was way too complicated. We were guilty of having a lawyer write it. It's been rewritten. It's much more reasonable, and what I think the town is now is closer to what Rehoboth now has, which is much more in line with what you should do. But we all want to preserve a tree canopy. More houses are going to be sold and torn down. If you take 5 houses a year being demolished, the lot's clear cut. In 10 years, you've really severely damaged your tree canopy. And new trees, if you plant a new tree, they grow 2 to 4 feet a year. To get up to 40 feet, you're talking 10 to 20 years before those trees are really part of the canopy. So the more you can preserve, the better off we are. Anyway, that's my comments. I think our house is a good example of what can be done. It's heavily treed, and we're very happy with it. So.
Thank you. Up next, we have Lou Montgomery.
Good morning. I'm Lou Montgomery at 80 Pine Reach. I am on the tree committee, but I'm speaking for myself. Have listened to all the comments, and I appreciate everybody's concerns. I certainly recognize the concern with trees that are a threat, as about 4 years ago I had a tree fall on my house. A big white oak in my front yard fell on the house. Stuart Rogers, our next-door neighbor, was kind enough to call me while I was in Bar Harbor, Maine, to say, your tree is down in your front yard. So I appreciate that. I also really appreciate the value of this canopy and what it gives to our community. I hope that what we have done in raising this discussion is give everyone a chance to sort of look again at the value of the trees, how you want your property and your community to look. Please give your input and talk about your concerns and your specific examples of things that are problematic about the new proposal. We all would appreciate hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Wendy Jacobs.
Good morning. Wendy Jacobs, 24 Rolling Road. And as Joni said, I may have had a little bit of hand to start the fire or to at least flame the embers. But certainly I want to thank the commissioners for recognizing that many of the residents were concerned with what was happening with the tree canopy. And as was said in the petition, that the intent was certainly not to point fingers or be accusatory, but just to bring the issue to the attention of the commissioners, which thankfully, you've really done a wonderful job in giving us a starting point, and I wanted to say thank you. The other thing is I had a bunch of notes here, and I was going to tell you a few things, but you've heard it all. You know where I stand on supporting the tree canopy. I woke up this morning at 5:20. I looked out my window, I heard the birds, and I said, wow, this is really special, and we can't duplicate this by planting new trees and by clear cutting. So I think that's something that we all need to think about as our generational and future, what the town is going to look like. And if we indeed want to look like other communities that don't have trees, well, there are lots of places to go, but this is pretty special. So, and the other thing I wanted to share with you was Genevieve and Jean Wilson were not able to be here today. They're in Costa Rica visiting their grandchild, and they weren't able to Zoom in or make comments, but she submitted some comments and asked if I would read them to the group. And I think that when you hear what Genevieve has to say, it really speaks, certainly it speaks to my voice, and I think it speaks to many of us. I am in favor of the proposed tree ordinance in Henlopen Acres. The reason is quite simple. Current and prospective homeowners have all been attracted to the town because of its unique beauty, and much of this stems from our lovely tree canopy. Over the years, I have heard many neighbors express dismay as one more lot is cleared or one more house is taken down to build a much larger house. As these events occur, there is always talk of tightening our regulations. How many more times will I hear neighbors saying that something should be done? Then the issue fades to the background until the next lot is cleared. This is actually an opportunity to do something that will benefit the town for a foreseeable future and maintain or increase property values for all of us. There are plenty of developments up and down the coast with big houses, no large growth trees, and little personality. Henlopen Acres is in a position to prevent our town from becoming just one more example of the lack of foresight and planning. Too many trees have already been lost as people discover our lax rules in the town and buy here because they can cut down whatever they want. New regulations are always difficult to enact, but the implied threat of lawsuits should not be a reason to shy away from trying to preserve the beauty of the area. I encourage the commissioners to take this hard step in approving and enforcing the proposed ordinance. Genevieve Wilson, Tidewaters. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Gabby Coppell.
Hi, everyone. I'm the shortest one here. Maybe I can't do that. Hopefully you can hear me. Thank you all for all your hard work. And I support the legislation as originally proposed, and I wholeheartedly support the comments of my neighbors, Henry and Scott. To be good neighbors, I'm speaking for my husband. Oh, I didn't say my address, 8 Dodds Lane. To be good neighbors, we are not going to talk directly about the property behind us in this public meeting. The development of that property speaks for itself. I think the development of our property speaks for itself. I think our property would fit today's proposed legislation. And our builder, by the way, really fought us not to take down trees. Our U-shaped driveway was scrapped to save 2 old trees at the end. We will share our thoughts on what the town should do on this issue because we live in a planned community created from the vision and design and implementation by the Corcorans, both Corcorans. Decades after the Corcorans created Henlopen Acres, another visionary developer created a planned community in Columbia, Maryland. His name was Jim Rouse, and he was from nearby Easton, Maryland. I worked for the REIT that Jim Rouse founded for most of my career as a real estate lawyer. I mentioned Jim Rouse because he believed that we demanded too little of ourselves and our cities. He believed that cities and towns could be better, that we could be better. In Rouse's view, we're at our best in smaller communities where there is a sense of responsibility to one's town and to one's neighbor. I always wonder if Jim Rouse met Colonel Corcoran. Sustainable development is the bread and butter of a planned community. It is the secret to the quality of life in Henlopen Acres. There are many issues that challenge the nature of our planned community. An effective strategy to assist in meeting today's moment is to plant and protect trees. Trees promote health and social well-being by removing air pollution, reducing stress, encouraging physical activity, and promoting social ties and community. Trees promote strong property values. Money spent on trees, whether maintaining trees or planting trees, has a high return on investment. While our temperatures rise and are getting hotter each summer, trees reduce temperatures. They provide habitat and food for animals. Trees are also valuable green infrastructure to manage stormwater. As you know, stormwater is a holistic issue, can't be solved by property to property, but like within property lines. Trees are a holistic benefit to Henlopen Acres and need the same approach. As we navigate this issue, we don't all need to agree, but we need to at least agree on the same path. We need leaders who understand the nuances of the built environment and trees as we strategically plan for Henlopen's future. The overwhelming evidence from the scientific literature suggests that investing in trees is an investment in people and property and ultimately an investment in a better Henlopen Acres in the future. Most important to note for today is that as trees age, they absorb and store more carbon than smaller trees, making protection of the larger ones uniquely important. To me, old canopy trees are like historic buildings. They are irreplaceable. We need this ordinance as originally drafted because it creates into law the requirement that your neighbor will do the right thing, that our town will use the full powers of the Corcoran idea, the Corcoran covenants, to sustain Henlopen Acres. It will guide the builders, architects, and tree removal companies, and it will serve Henlopen Acres as a planned community for generations to come. To close and reiterate, Jim Rouse, the ordinance will establish the responsibility each of us has to our town and to our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, on our list, we have Norma Lee Derrickson.
Norma Lee Derrickson, 49 Tidewaters, and I grew up in Rehoboth Beach. Not many people can say that. But I want to thank the committee for all the work they've done, and it's a good start. And I just have a question about the permitting. If I wanted to cut down a tree, is it going to cost money?
Yes, there will be a fee for the permit application, and that fee would be set by the Board of Commissioners, similar to the other fee structures we have in place.
So you'll just decide at the time?
Mm-hmm.
But I applaud the effort to keep what makes this community unique. My husband knew both the Corcorans personally.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to stand and provide comment? Yes, please go ahead. Just remember to share with us your name and your property address.
Tom Donnelly, 5 Tidewaters. What I'm about to say is tangential to the tree policy, but I think it impacts it in some respects. I've always thought that the 6,000 square foot limit didn't make a lot of sense for all of the lots here. For example, we have a 150-foot frontage. Our neighbors next door have about 100-foot frontage. Does it make sense to build 2 6,000 square foot homes on those? What I would recommend to the board is to look at your square footage policy and somehow equate it to the size of the lots. That's all I have.
Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
Hey everyone, I'm Aileen Unger, and Tony spoke earlier, and I'm in agreement with everything he said. A couple of things. We can't build a 6,000 square foot house. Yes, in Henlopen Acres, the maximum house that you can build is 6,000 square feet. But if you take into consideration the rest of the building code, it doesn't equate to that on a smaller lot. As Tony said, our house is a little over 4,000 square feet, and that is maxed out. So that's just not correct. Second of all, I'm not comfortable being told how I should feel safe in my new home. And yes, we've had a tree fall in one of our previous houses, and thank God we were not home when that happened. We have a neighbor who had a tree fall because our old house was in a very wooded area as well, because we love trees. Our neighbor had a tree fall in their house, and they were home. And I will tell you, it's a very sad story. I don't want to be living under the decisions of a town or my neighbors whether I should feel safe when I go to sleep at night. And as far as property values and trees, yes, trees are beautiful and they should be protected. However, I don't know that Tony and I would have bought our lot if we knew this was all coming down so heavy-handed so quickly. And when we speak to other friends, because we have a house in Rehoboth, and we have for years, and we have many friends in the community, they're like, wow, didn't you know about that? Well, we called the town's office, and we were told what the current codes are. So no, when we went to settlement and signed our settlement papers, we thought we were going to be able to make that decision on our own. And again, like Tony pointed out, the landscaping and tree proposal must be submitted with permit requests. If we were going to clear a lot, flatten out our lot, there's room for discussion. But I don't know that we would have bought our lot if it was at the mercy of subjective decisions. And thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? Thank you. Okay, so just as a reminder, the comment period does remain open until next Friday, May 30th and 4:30 p.m. You can submit your comments by mail, you can drop them off to us physically, or submit them by email. All comments bear equal weight. Is there anything else, Mayor or anyone on the commission, before we close out?
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. Happy Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day. Go Orange.
Sail on popcorn at the movie theater.